Hi once again, and welcome to tutorial number 20, where we're going to be looking at putting a mountain range and various other bits and pieces into the environment that the game actually takes place in, just to finish everything off. If we have a quick look at the mountain range first, let's go into our file here. Okay, so the first thing I've done, I've set my live selection tool up to a much larger radius here, in preparation for what we're about to do. First thing to do, grab a hold of, not one of those, don't want a cube, grab a hold of a landscape, go into my top view, and I'll position it in about the middle of the scoreboard here, and somewhere just around there. Next thing to do is resize it, so if we just select model mode and resize, make it quite large in order to accommodate everything. Cut back to the side view here, get it in the correct position, which is about somewhere around there, it's about floor level, and then make it larger. Probably going to need to play around and manipulate this a bit just to get it to where you need it to be. We'll make it a little larger again. I just don't want to move the scoreboard. We'll just make it a little bit larger again in the height, and then drag it up until we're once again about in the correct position there. Okay, so we've got quite a huge mountain range there. What we now need to do is switch to our top view, make the landscape editable, go into points, and then we can start thinking about painting this area out, because we're going to lose all of this. What I'll also do is change my display to lines. Now I can see my scoreboard, so I can see that I've got rather a lot of area behind the scoreboard, which I don't really need. Could do with a bit more where the snakes are, so really I need to be there. I just paint sort of around here, just into this area and around into there, something like that. And what I'll do, just make my live selection a little smaller, somewhere around there, and then I can paint some of these out just to make it a little bit more craggy. Paint that a little bit out too, perhaps there, and perhaps behind the snakes a little bit. That should be fine. A little bit of crag sort of in there, it's quite nice. Probably won't see some of this, but it's worth just having a little play around. Okay, so that's looking good. If we switch back into probably our front view, and then what we need to do is go into mesh commands, and we can say set point value. What we need to do, don't want it in crumple mode, we want to set to center. We don't want to set that one or that one, we just want our y-axis. So we're going to set these to, take that one off as well. So we're going to set the y-axis, apply that, and now they're all at the same level. They're not in the right places, but we can just grab a hold of them, move them down until we create the ground. Just go into side view, make sure that we've got it correct. Somewhere around there will be fine. And that gives us a backdrop, which is looking quite nice. Next thing we can do with the landscape is drop it into a subdivision, and that gives us a nice sort of ridged mountain there. The next thing from here is to grab another couple of landscapes, and all I did was dress those in. I'll switch to my top view once again, put these somewhere in the background, I think we'll put it back into Garage shading again so that we can see where we are. It doesn't really matter where they go, as long as they dress in okay, it's going to be fine. We'll change the seed value here so that we get a slightly different type of landscape to the one we've got there, otherwise we'll just get a smaller version of what we've got there. And then it's a case of side view, again altering the height. So we just make it bigger, position it somewhere in there, see what we've got. Okay, so we need to move it over. And it's certainly the case that we need to make it bigger, so let's make it considerably bigger. Getting there. Something like that, I would think. Just need to blot out the background really, just to make sure that we're covering what we don't want to see. That looks reasonably good. I think we'll keep that one. That one's fine. And then it's a case of simply copying this one. Zoom out a little. Copy this one over to here. What I'll probably also do is change the size of it, and certainly again go into the seed value and alter that so that we get a different landscape again. And that's looking good as it is, actually, looking quite fine. So we'll put that one somewhere around there. And I think we'll be all right. That looks fine to me. Yeah, that's dressed that in okay. And that's all you really need to do. There's nothing clever about it. It doesn't need to be anything particularly clever at all, as long as it just covers the background and makes that look okay. And that's looking good. It's given us an environment now. With regard to the textures, I'm not going to go into too much detail again because we're not really about modelling here, it's just about finishing off. But if I go back into my snake race game, what I've done for the texture, all I did was grab a noise in the texture here, change the two colours so that we get something sandy. It's displaced Voronoi, I suppose you would pronounce that. And I don't think I did very much else with it apart from change the space to texture to give us the sort of layers going through it. That's really all I was looking for there, so that it gives it that nice sort of sandy mountain sort of texture that I'm looking for. And that's about it. There's not really much being done with any of this with any of this at all. It's just literally change the space to texture, the type of noise has been changed, and the actual two colours, and that's as much as I've really done there. That's our mountain range dealt with. The track that they race on, obviously just a flat plane again, made the correct size, just dressed in basically by working out where the starts and finish points are for the snakes, nothing more. I didn't do anything clever with that. Obviously made it the right width. If we switch to our top view, you can see that it's just been dressed until it's about the right sort of width for the snakes to race along. The important bit about it is the texture. If we just go into the track texture here, in this instance I've used tiles, set it up so that my grout colour at the top is white. Tile colours 1 and 2 are exactly the same, sort of a reddish brown, and then tile colour 3 again is white. For the pattern I've used lines 1, the grout width is 3% and the bevel 2%. Orientation I've set to U. And the rest of this remains exactly the same, there's nothing been changed. So that's all I've really done with the actual texture there. The other part of it that's important, if we go into our texture tag here, the U offset I've changed, the V offset I've changed, and the V length is something that I've also altered. Other than that, the U length is at its default value of 100%, so nothing changed there. And I've manipulated these values until it created the 5 lanes. I did have to do a little bit of playing around, but not too much really. Start and finish banners. Once again, these are just a couple of flat planes, but to make them crumpled, I've actually used the Studio Bundles dynamics for the cloth engine. If you haven't got that though, it's a simple case. If we go into here and get another flat plane, just move it up, put it in +X, and then we can just roughly get it to the right size, so somewhere around there. Position it here somewhere. Again, switch to a side view and dress this in. Snakes are just down the bottom there. If we place it somewhere around there, take the width a little bit further out, and that should do nicely. I would leave it at 20 and 20 in the height and width segments. Then following on from here, make it editable and select point mode, and you have quite a lot of points to play with there. What you can then do, you can zoom in on the whole object. It's a bit long-winded this, so I won't do all of it. If we take our selection down to around 10 again in the radius, it's a case of selecting and then slightly moving the selected points 2 rows at a time until you've simulated the weight that you get on a piece of cloth when it's strung between 2 posts. And you can see where this is going to go. It's going to gradually sag in the middle as if the cloth has weight. To simulate the creases, if you select all of the points and then you select, once again, set point value, and we then say we'd like it to be crumpled axially and we want it to be along the x-axis. It's set up because I've already done this earlier, and 1 centimetre should be enough. So if we just apply that, it crumples along the x, and you can see that it's moved the points there. And now if we go back into our modelling mode, and in our view, if we just change our display to garroted lines, will we see it better? No, actually we won't. Okay, never mind. I'll just switch from the view from this particular camera, and I'll zoom out a little bit and then frame my banner. You can see that there's a crumple in there, and it's done it quite nicely actually. And when that's combined with the weight that you can create by moving the points, you're going to get something that will resemble a cloth banner. So that will work fine. And that's all you really need to do there if you don't have the cloth engine. Exactly the same setup applies, of course, to the finished banner. If we just cut across to our completed snake race game for a minute, the texture for this was created by simply using the spline in here. So if we click on that to open it up, as you can see, it's just an orange background texture, and the line texture I've just set to yellow there. And then it was a case of experimenting with the offset and scale parameter in the x-axis. And then the plane needs to be set to the x-y axis. Once again, I experimented with the line width until I'd got it the way I wanted it. Put my text into the text field there, and I've used Comixed RP Bold for the typeface. The height spacing can be adjusted as need be. And that's pretty much all there is to that one. The finished banner, slightly different in the way that I've approached it, in that I've put a background texture in there to give it a checkerboard or checkered flag sort of pattern. Other than that, it's once again a similar situation with setting up the spacings and the various scales and offsets until you get what you want. Set it up the same down here. Horizontal spacing may be a bit different to the other one. And that's really all that needs to be done there. And the remaining setup is done on the tags, so it's a case of getting into the tags once again, experimenting with the offsets and also the lengths this time. So that's how I've gone about doing that. Obviously the same with the finished banner. If we just go into there, exactly the same thing. Just playing around with the offsets and the lengths until you get it set up exactly the way you want it on the banners there. Okay, that's the way I've put that together. As for the posts, they're just literally a couple of cylinders. That's all they are. I've not even bothered to texture them because we're not going to render this. And that being the case, really there's no need to texture them at all. on the caps, I've put a tiny little bit of fillet on them just to make them slightly smoother at the tops. And that's really it. Just dress them in as they need to be dressed in. And that really, that's all there is to any of this. Nothing to stop you from putting this in your own environment. You could put it in a stadium if you wish to. There's nothing to say that you've got to have it in a canyon. Experiment, see what you can come up with. But that's as much as I've done with any of this. Just to finish it off, physical sky, that's the last thing I've done. I've got a time and location. I've set it up for Mexico, Central America, which seemed quite appropriate for this. November 2014 is where we're looking at, the 23rd of November 2014, and it's about 5 to 6 in the evening. So it's an evening sort of scene where the sun's on its way down, but it's still pretty warm in Mexico. And that's essentially all I've done with any of that. With the sky, again, I haven't done anything clever with it. It's all presets. Nothing has been changed really, apart from the time and the location. That's the only thing I think I experimented with. I didn't do anything else. And that really is all I've done to finish it off. So that just about, once again, completes this tutorial. Hopefully you've enjoyed our long journey, and we've just got the one more to do, which is the optimization of our Expresso expressions for number 21. So I will see you there in the not too distant future. See you soon.